I thought my life was safe. I thought my marriage, my family, and the people around me could be trusted. But the night my husband pushed me out of my wheelchair at a family party, dismissing my pain as attention-seeking, everything changed. Alone, betrayed, and nearly dead, I discovered the web of lies, manipulation, and danger that extended far beyond him. His sister, hidden partners, and unseen forces all had a stake in my downfall. But I survived, I watched, I waited. And then, piece by piece, I reclaimed my life with quiet precision, turning betrayal into empowerment, fear into strategy, and danger into a victory that no one saw coming. I always believed Alaska had a way of magnifying the truth. The cold air slices through pretenses. The silence pushes secrets to the surface. And the darkness, well, the darkness forces you to sit with what you've been avoiding. My name is Clara. And at the time of this story, I hadn't walked in almost 8 months. Not since the collapse. Not since the night my legs stopped responding at the top of our cabin stairs while my husband, Owen, watched from below with unreadable eyes. The doctors had theories. Owen had excuses. And I had doubts I tried hard to drown. The beginning of the end came wrapped in something as ordinary as an invitation. Owen's mother's winter gathering. A family tradition in Anchorage. A tradition I had become the outsider to. But I said yes. Of course I did. Because back then I still believed in repairing things that were quietly falling apart. He wheeled me into the house that night like I was a piece of fragile cargo. Not lovingly, not protectively, just, mechanically, detached. As if touching the handles of my chair contaminated him. That was the first sign. Not obvious. Not loud. Just a cold breeze under a closed door. Inside, his family paused conversations to smile at me tight, polite smiles. The kind that say bless her heart without using any words at all. And then I noticed it. The first oddity. A flash of something in Owen's eyes when his brother asked how my therapy was going. A flicker. A warning. A fear. Not for me. For himself. It was subtle, but in hindsight, everything began with that flicker, because real monsters don't show teeth first. They hide them. They wait. And I was about to learn exactly what had been hiding behind my husband's smile. When tension sits on a room like frost, you feel it before you understand it. That's how it was the moment we entered the living room. Warm lights, soft music, polished wood floors, and yet somehow, freezing. His family talked around me, not to me. It wasn't new, but that night felt sharper. Owen stood behind my wheelchair, his hands resting on the metal handles as if claiming territory. He didn't lean close. He didn't touch me. He didn't whisper reassurances the way husbands do when someone they love feels out of place. Instead, he squeezed the handles whenever a question came near me. Slight, tense squeezes. Controlling. Reminding. That was warning number 2. As conversations swirled, his mother commented loudly, too loudly, that I looked healthier than usual. I forced a smile. Owen didn't. My wife just needs rest, he said, voice low, clipped. His family nodded sympathetically. But his tone, the defensiveness, it felt rehearsed. People talk differently when they're hiding something. Then came the moment, the first real crack. His aunt leaned toward me and asked gently, "Do the doctors think you'll walk again?" A simple, human question. Before I could respond, Owen cut in, fast, sharply, almost panicked. "We're not discussing medical stuff tonight." I froze. Because that didn't make sense. Not unless the topic wasn't about my condition, but about his version of it. I didn't know yet. Not fully. But the first puzzle piece slid into place. And then, right in the middle of small talk, right as I was trying to navigate awkward questions, Owen leaned down to my ear. "Don't overdo it. You look dramatic when you're tired." I felt the humiliation creep across my skin like frostbite. Dramatic. That word lingered far too long. Little did I know. He would use a harsher word soon. A much harsher one. People imagine betrayal as a loud moment. A slammed door. A shouted accusation. A confession dripping with guilt. But the truth? Real betrayal is quiet. It begins as a whisper, a hesitation, a flicker of something that shouldn't be there. That's how it started for me, subtle, almost ignorable, yet sharp enough to leave a mark. I noticed it when Owen stepped away to talk to his cousins near the dining table. He spoke with his hands. He always did. But that night his gestures were too sharp, too defensive, like he was warding something off. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I doubt he even thought about the acoustics of the room. But an open floor plan is a dangerous thing for a man with secrets. His cousin, Ezra, was saying something quiet, almost scolding. Something about honesty. About deserving to know. Ezra's eyes shifted to me, then away quickly. And Owen? Owen shook his head too fast. Too firm. A hard refusal. They stopped talking when they noticed I was watching. A normal husband might have smiled, gestured me over, included me. Owen didn't. He stepped in front of my line of sight. A human shield. A barrier of flesh and fear. He came back to me pretending nothing happened. That was mistake number one. Maybe I should have let it go. Maybe I should have chosen peace instead of curiosity. But something in my bones told me to pay attention. Because a man who guards his secrets too tightly is usually hiding something dark. Later, in the hallway near the coat closet, Owen's phone buzzed. He moved away fast to answer it. Not fast like "excuse me," fast like "no one else can see this." The tone of his voice shifted, low, rushed, nervous. I didn't catch much. Just fragments. "Not tonight. I told you. She's fine. Just stop panicking." Stop panicking. Those words froze me. Panic about what? My condition? The party? Me? He never panicked for me. Not once. When he noticed me listening, he hung up immediately mid-sentence. "Telemarketer," he said flatly. No eye contact. No warmth. Just a closed door disguised as a human. That was mistake number two. When we returned to the living room, I noticed Owen's mother whisper to him. Her eyes flicked to my chair, to my legs, then back to him. Her hands moved subtly, asking silent questions. Questions Owen shut down with a small shake of his head. I wasn't meant to decode it. But when people lie near you long enough, you learn the language. She didn't believe something. He didn't want her to know something. And they both looked terrified of the truth. This was my life now. A wheelchair in the center of a family that treated me like a delicate secret. Owen tried to maneuver my chair between furniture to get me closer to the fireplace. A cozy gesture on the surface. But then he accidentally bumped me into the corner of a wooden table. Hard. Too hard. The jar of cranberry sauce sitting at the edge wobbled, tipped, and splattered across the hardwood floor. Bright red. Cold. Startling. The thump of the table shot through my spine. A spark of pain flashed through my lower back. Everyone turned. Everyone stared. Owen lifted his hands in a dramatic gesture. "Sorry," he said loudly. "She leans her weight weird sometimes." She leans her weight weird. I didn't lean anything. I wasn't even moving. That was mistake number three. As people cleaned the spill, Owen walked away again. Too quickly, too relieved to leave me sitting alone. And that was when the thread connected in my mind. He wasn't just embarrassed by my condition. He wasn't just irritated. He wasn't just cold. He was scared. Terrified, even. But not of me. Not of my disability. No. He feared what someone might say. What someone might reveal. What someone knew. A different kind of trembling ran through me. Not from weakness. From awakening. Something wasn't right about my illness. It had never been right. And tonight Owen was showing me the truth without meaning to. I didn't know the full picture yet. I didn't have the proof. Not then. But I felt it deep, certain, anchoring. The betrayal wasn't coming. It had already begun. And the night was just getting started. Because in less than an hour, he would cross a line he couldn't uncross. And the whole room would witness it. People say heartbreak comes in waves. But for me, in that house, surrounded by people who smiled with their teeth but not their eyes, it came as stillness. A hollow, cold stillness. The kind that tells you something is deeply, irreversibly wrong. It began with Owen's mother. A woman who always wore pearls, even indoors. Tonight, the pearls were trembling slightly at her throat. Fear disguised in jewelry. She approached me with a gentle smile, kneeling so our eyes met. Her kindness was real. Her nervousness was louder. "Clara, dear. Has your pain been worse lately?" A simple question. Normal, human, but something in her voice carried a tremble. A warning wrapped in politeness. Before I could answer, Owen swooped in from behind me like a shadow. His hand clamped down on my shoulder. "She's fine," he cut in. "She exaggerates when she's tired." There it was again. That word. That tone. That dismissive, practiced cruelty. My mother-in-law flinched, a tiny movement barely noticeable unless you were watching for it. And I was. She stood and forced a smile, but her eyes told a story she wasn't brave enough to speak aloud. A story Owen didn't want spoken at all. Later, when conversation drifted and the fireplace crackled with artificial warmth, I asked Owen quietly, "Did you bring my medications? The ones I needed nightly. The ones I never missed. The ones that kept my symptoms from spiraling." His jaw tightened. "They aren't necessary tonight," he muttered. "You're fine." I wasn't fine. He knew that. But what chilled me wasn't his refusal. It was the flicker of relief in his eyes when he said it. Relief. As if he wanted me unmedicated. As if he wanted something to happen. That was when the floor of my trust cracked a little more. Owen's family insisted on a group photo. I tried to refuse, my body was exhausted, and the room spun gently around me. But Owen insisted louder. He positioned everyone carefully, placing me in the center like a fragile prop. While the photographer fiddled with the camera settings, I overheard two cousins whispering behind the staircase. "She doesn't know yet. How could she? He hides everything. Someone has to tell her. Not tonight. Not tonight." Those same words from his earlier phone call. My chest tightened. The truth was circling me. Like wolves around a wounded animal. Someone knew something. Everyone feared something. And Owen. Owen was the center of it. After the photo, I excused myself to the restroom. Halfway there, my chair's wheel snagged on a rug corner. I leaned forward instinctively. And Owen caught me from behind. Not gently. Not protectively. His grip was harsh, fingers pressing into my sides. "You need to stop making everything look dramatic," he hissed. "You're embarrassing me." Embarrassing him. For almost falling. Because of a rug. I stared at him, searching for a trace of the man I married. The man who once carried me through snowstorms, whispering warmth into my numb hands. That man was gone. Devoured by something darker. Or, maybe he had always been hiding. His mask was slipping. Piece by piece. When we returned to the living room, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations slowed. Eyes followed us, concern mixed with dread. And for a fleeting moment, just a moment, I thought I saw pity. For me. Not him. His brother, Ezra, stared at Owen like he was seeing him for the first time. Seeing through him. Owen squeezed the back of my wheelchair. Hard. Too hard. Pain shot up my spine, but I bit it back. Because reacting would only make his grip tighter. That's when I knew. Everyone in that room had an opinion of my marriage. And none of them were brave enough to voice it. I tried to reach for a cup of water on a low side table. My arms were tired, shaky. Owen noticed. He stepped over. And instead of helping, he pushed the table slightly out of reach. "Don't strain yourself," he said coldly. "You overdo things." I froze. It wasn't normal. It wasn't accidental. He wasn't preventing strain. He was preventing independence. And his mother saw it. I watched her expression shift. From confusion, to realization, to heartbreak. She finally whispered to him, "Owen, stop." He ignored her. He kept his eyes on me. A steady, warning stare. A predator assessing prey. That's when my chest tightened. Not emotionally. Physically. A familiar, frightening constriction. I swallowed hard, feeling heat rise up my throat. Pain. Sharp. Radiating. My breathing grew shallow. "Owen," I whispered, "I'm not feeling." He leaned down. His lips brushed my ear. "Not now. Don't start." Start. As if my pain was a performance. I wasn't performing. I was terrified. This was no flare-up. This was something else. Something my body recognized. And feared. But Owen. He didn't. He looked annoyed. Embarrassed. Inconvenienced. That's when the heartbreak fully settled in. Not because he didn't help me. But because he didn't want to. And I hadn't yet realized just how far he would go to silence my pain. Because within the next chapter, he wouldn't just dismiss my suffering. He would amplify it. Publicly. Cruelly. And everything I suspected would crystallize into the truth. There are moments in life when time doesn't just slow. It fractures. Breaks. Suspends itself between one heartbeat and the next. The moment my husband betrayed me in front of his entire family was one of those. It started as pressure. A dull, thudding weight beneath my ribs. At first, I thought it was nerves. Then something sharper, tighter, unmistakably wrong. The kind of pain I had experienced before. The kind the doctors warned could escalate. The kind Owen knew meant immediate action. I whispered, "Owen, something's wrong. I can't breathe properly." He didn't bend down. He didn't touch me. He didn't even look concerned. He sighed. Loudly, theatrically. Then, in a voice meant to be overheard, "She gets like this when she's overwhelmed. It's just anxiety." His mother's eyes widened. His brother stepped forward. But Owen lifted his palm. A silent command for everyone to step back. And they did. Because he was the husband. The authority. The man who supposedly knew me best. They didn't know he was the one they should have feared. The pressure in my chest intensified, radiating down my left arm. A warning sign I'd been told never to ignore. My breaths grew short, sharp, shallow. "Owen. Please. Something's wrong. I need to sit back." "You are sitting," he snapped, "and you're fine." "Stop. Stop." The word hit harder than the pain. Ezra approached again. "Maybe she needs a doctor." Owen cut him off instantly. "She's not having another episode. She just wants attention." Attention. The room fell silent. All eyes shifted to me. Watching me gasp. Watching my face pale. Wondering if I was dramatic. My humiliation burned hotter than the pain. But then, the betrayal sharpened. I tried to shift in my chair, reaching for the armrest, trying to ease the crushing feeling in my chest. My movement was slow, weak, barely anything. But Owen reacted with explosive irritation. "Clara, stop it. You're embarrassing yourself." He grabbed the handles of my wheelchair. And instead of steadying me, he shoved the chair forward. Hard. My hand slipped. My weight tipped. The room spun. And before anyone could catch me, before I could protect myself, I fell. Out of the wheelchair. Onto the hardwood floor. My shoulder hitting first. Then my cheek. Then everything went white for a second. Gasps erupted around me. His mother screamed my name. And Owen, my husband, stood over me and shouted, "Get up, Clara. Stop faking for attention." The words echoed through the room. Loud, merciless, unfiltered. "Stop faking, for attention." Every syllable cut open something inside me. My chest pain surged so violently I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could barely move. And yet, in the middle of my agony, I looked up at him, and do you know what I saw? Not concern. Not fear. Annoyance. Anger. A defensive, cornered man. Terrified of something being exposed. Not exposed by me. Exposed because of me. His mother rushed toward me, falling to her knees, her hands trembling as she touched my face. "She's not faking," she cried. "She's in pain, look at her." Ezra wasn't far behind. He knelt beside me, gripping my hand gently. "Clara, can you speak? Can you breathe?" I tried. I opened my mouth. But air barely came. That's when his sister grabbed her phone. "I'm calling 911, she declared. Owen exploded. "No. Absolutely not. She does not need an ambulance." He stepped between his sister and the phone, blocking her. "Physically, she's doing this again. She wants sympathy. Don't feed into this." Again. Sympathy. Each word twisted deeper. His mother rose, her voice shaking with anger. "Owen, this is medical. Move." He refused. He planted himself like a wall. "This will ruin the night. She'll be fine in a few minutes." Ruin the night. My life was collapsing on the floor, and he was worried about his party. His brother finally stepped forward. Voice low, controlled. "Dangerous. Owen. This is exactly why we said something months ago. This isn't normal. None of this is normal." The room froze. Everyone went still. Everyone except Owen, whose face drained of color. "Shut up," he snapped. His voice cracking. A first fracture. My heart stuttered. Chest constricting. Pain flaring with every breath. Something had happened months ago. Something they had confronted him about. And suddenly, the pieces were rearranging themselves in my mind. My collapse. My symptoms. The missing pills. His fear of doctors. His family's pity. Their silence. Owen wasn't worried about an ambulance bill. He wasn't worried about drama. He was worried about what a doctor might find. And in that moment, lying on the floor, gasping for breath, I understood. He wasn't afraid of me being hurt. He was afraid of me being healed. I don't remember much of what happened next. Just flashes. His sister pushing past him, his mother crying. Ezra holding me upright against his chest so I didn't choke. Someone shouting, "She's turning pale. Call now." Owen yelling, panicking, desperate to stop it. And then, a phone ringing out, his sister speaking firmly. "Hello? We need an ambulance, female, late 20s, severe chest pain, collapsed, difficulty breathing." Owen grabbed the phone. She jerked it out of his reach. A struggle. And that was when I realized the truth. Not the full truth. Not yet. But enough. Owen wasn't just neglectful. He wasn't just cruel. He was hiding something. Something that made the idea of me going to a hospital absolutely terrifying. For him. Because the doctor told me something Owen prayed would never be discovered. And that truth? It would change everything. The house felt different when she walked back in, quieter. Heavier. As though the walls themselves were waiting for her to make sense of what had cracked open earlier that evening. The living room lamp hummed faintly, casting a warm halo across the couch where she collapsed, still dressed, still trembling, still replaying every second of the doctor's calm but devastating words. A silent heart attack. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't even bother wiping it. The clock ticked from 11:42 to 11:43. Each second chipped at the illusion she'd been living in. That love automatically meant safety. That marriage guaranteed partnership. That loyalty was something she could take for granted. Then headlights swept across the window. He was home. Her heartbeat quickened. Not from fear, no. Fear had burned out hours ago. What replaced it was colder, leaner, sharper. Awareness. The door opened. His footsteps entered. His keys clattered on the table. "Where'd you go?" he asked, annoyed, not concerned. She didn't answer. She didn't even turn her head. She could feel him looking at her. Confused. Irritated. Unsettled by the silence he wasn't used to receiving. "What's wrong with you now?" he said. "What's wrong with me?" Her muscles tightened, a bitter laugh threatening to climb up her throat. Slowly, very slowly she stood. "I went to the hospital." He blinked. "Hospital? For what?" A beat of silence. "For the chest pain you told me to stop overreacting about." His expression stuttered through disbelief, annoyance. Then a flash of something uglier. "You seriously did that? You embarrassed yourself for nothing?" Her eyes lifted to his, steady and unshakable. "For nothing?" "The doctor said I had a silent heart attack." Everything stopped. He didn't gasp. He didn't panic. He didn't rush forward. He just froze. Not in fear for her, no. In fear of what her words meant. Because a medical record like that? It meant responsibility. It meant accountability. It meant scrutiny. His voice dropped. "You're joking." "No," she whispered. "I'm finally done doing that." "Well, you seem fine. Don't make this dramatic." Her breath left her. A piece of her soul cracked quietly, with no sound, like a thin sheet of ice under too much weight. And she knew, without flinching, without doubt, this man would never protect her, never prioritize her, never choose her. But she didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't collapse the way he expected. Instead, she nodded, one controlled, chilling nod that made him uncomfortable. "I see," she murmured, turning away. "Good night." She closed the bedroom door behind her and locked it. Not to keep him out, but to give herself a moment of sacred, private clarity. On the other side of that thin wooden barrier, her mind began drawing new lines. Lines he didn't know existed. Lines he'd soon regret crossing. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, inhaling with slow, deliberate control. Tonight wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about rage. It was the night of quiet decisions, the kind that look soft from the outside but shift the direction of an entire life. The kind that erase the version of a woman who tolerated being dismissed. The kind that begin the transformation. And in that silence, in that locked room, she whispered to herself, "I survived a heart attack. I can survive losing him. Tomorrow would not be the same. Tomorrow, I would start thinking, searching, observing. Tomorrow, I would see what he'd been hiding all along. Tomorrow, the story would change." Morning came quietly, but something in me had changed so profoundly that even the air felt different. I stayed in bed a few extra minutes, not from weakness but from calculation. The locked door, the silence, the way I didn't greet him. It had already unsettled him. I could sense it. And unsettling him was the first tiny step toward reclaiming myself. When I finally emerged, he was in the kitchen pretending to scroll on his phone, but the stiffness in his shoulders betrayed him. He looked up quickly, studying my expression, searching for softness, for surrender, for the woman he was used to. That woman was gone. "You're up," he said. Not warm, not apologetic. Just thrown off. I walked to the sink and poured a glass of water. Yes. He waited for more. I offered nothing. My calmness rattled him far more than yelling ever could. He cleared his throat. "So, you feeling better?" I didn't look at him. "Better than last night." That was the truth, just not in the way he assumed. I turned slightly, enough to catch his face in my periphery. His eyes were restless, darting between me and the table. He was worried, but not for my health. He was worried about the story my silence might tell. Good. I carried my water upstairs, listening as he let out a frustrated exhale. The sound confirmed what I already knew. He wanted control back. He wasn't going to get it. After a shower, I sat with my planner, not the one I kept publicly visible, but the quiet one, with notes and observations written during the turning points in my life. Today, I added a new entry. Pay attention. Observe. He showed you who he is. I opened my laptop to check my medical portal lab results, imaging, the follow-up instructions the doctor emphasized. Everything was there, clear and undeniable. No exaggeration, no overreacting. Just the truth his convenience tried to erase. As I read, a message popped up on the screen. Not addressed to me. Not even supposed to arrive on this device. Because it wasn't my email. It was his. His account was still logged in from the last time he'd borrowed my laptop to print something, a detail I hadn't considered important then, but that now felt like fate handing me a thread. The preview line of the message made my stomach tighten. Last night was risky. Did she suspect anything? My finger hovered over the trackpad. The sender's name? Unknown. But the writing tone was casual, familiar, confident. Someone comfortable enough to speak about me like I was an inconvenience. I clicked the message. My heart beat once hard. The email was short. You disappearing for a few hours made me nervous. If she's getting suspicious, we need to slow things down. You promised this wouldn't get messy. There was more screenshots, attachments, a thread of previous messages with dates going back months. He'd been hiding something. And the moment I realized the heart attack wasn't the only thing he had ignored. I sat back in my chair, the glassy surface of the screen blinking quietly at me. He wasn't just negligent, he was distracted, occupied, invested elsewhere. And whatever elsewhere was, it had been going on long before last night. My breath steadied. My spine straightened. This wasn't just a marriage problem. This was a deception problem. And there, in that quiet room where sunlight touched my face like a soft warning, I made the second decision of my new life. I would not confront him yet. Not until I knew the full scope of what he'd done. Because I had learned something crucial in the ER. When your heart reminds you, it can stop at any moment. You stop wasting beats on people who don't deserve them. I closed the email. Then I opened a new page in my private planner. Step 1. Investigate. Everything after that would change the shape of their world. The day moved slowly, almost deliberately, giving me time to gather my breath, my thoughts, and the clarity I needed. I didn't rush. I didn't stress. I let silence work for me. Silence unnerves guilty people. And he was very, very guilty. I stepped into the hallway, moving with a calm deliberateness that made every creak of the floorboards feel intentional. My wheelchair hummed quietly against the wood as I positioned myself at the top of the stairs, listening. He was downstairs, pacing. I heard the dull thud of his palm against the counter, annoyed, confused, scared of what she might be thinking. Good. I descended slowly, deliberately, each wheel rotation, a reminder that I had survived the night he didn't think I needed saving from. When I reached the living room, he turned immediately. You've been quiet, he said, almost snapping it. I've had a lot to think about. His jaw moved, tightening. About last night? I didn't answer. That was the answer. He shifted uncomfortably, then gestured to me with a half-hearted attempt at gentleness. Look, Clara. I raised a hand. Just one. A tiny gesture that cut through his attempt at control like ice. "I'm going to rest later," I said. "Don't disturb me." I didn't wait for his reaction. I rolled past him toward the patio door, the one overlooking the frozen lake that wrapped around the back of their Alaska home like a white, unbroken secret. Behind me, I heard his breath hitch because he realized something he never expected. I wasn't asking for his validation anymore. Outside, the cold air cleansed the remnants of last night's fear from my lungs. The ice shimmered, a quiet reminder of how thin a surface can be before it cracks. I pulled out my phone. Not to scroll, not to text, to take pictures, specifically, of his car. I circled it carefully, photographing the tires, the mileage, the timestamp details he never imagined I would pay attention to. But I needed the evidence to confirm my suspicion. He wasn't home during the hours I thought he was, the hours I was clutching her chest, begging him silently, praying in the dark. He had left. The slight warmth in the hood despite the sub-zero night told me more than he ever would. Interesting, I whispered to myself, breath forming a soft cloud in the air. I documented everything. Date, time, mileage. Information was power. Subtle, quiet, lethal power. When I went back inside, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. One sentence. One spark. "Does he know you read the emails?" I froze. The room tilted not in panic, but in realization. Someone out there knew. Someone was watching. Someone was involved. My fingers hovered over the screen. Whoever this is, they're afraid of what I know. Or afraid of what I'll discover next. I screenshot the message and locked my phone. Not a single response. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of nervous typing. I went upstairs and opened his email again. Slowly. Methodically. Quietly. This time, I didn't just skim. I dug. Thread by thread. Message by message. Attachment by attachment. Receipts. Hotel confirmations. Cryptic exchanges with someone using initials only. And worst, financial transfers to a secondary account I didn't know existed. Not large amounts. Just enough to avoid suspicion. Or so he thought. But the small details? Those were my specialty. I copied them all to an encrypted folder on a flash drive I kept hidden for years just in case life ever turned unpredictably cruel. It had. And now it was mine to use. As I finished, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Slow, heavy, hesitant. He was coming to check on me. Of course he was. My silence had become its own warning alarm. I closed the laptop, placed it aside, and sat perfectly still. He knocked. "Clara? Are you okay?" My voice was quiet, neutral. Resting. A pause. A breath. Then footsteps retreating down the hallway. He was nervous. Good. When he finally went back downstairs, I reached for the stack of papers he kept in the drawer beside his nightstand, documents I pretended never to care about. I sifted through receipts and dry cleaning slips. Then my fingers stopped. My breath caught. It was a single sheet of paper tucked near the bottom. A printed email. From the same sender. With a single confirming sentence. "Once it's done, we both walk away clean." My pulse thrummed not from fear, but from vindication. This wasn't just infidelity, or negligence, or emotional betrayal. This was a plan. Something was supposed to be done. And last night my heart attack, my plea for help, his shocking refusal, suddenly felt less like cruelty, and more like strategy. I sat back, letting the truth settle across my skin like frost. They had intended something. Together. Something fatal. But I had lived. And now? I was planning something too. The truth didn't frighten me. It sharpened me. I sat at the edge of the bed, holding that printed email between my fingers, the edges crinkling as I tightened my grip. The words were simple, but the implication was enormous, bigger than infidelity, bigger than deceit. They had wanted me gone. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Literally. And I wasn't gone. That meant the balance of power had shifted quietly, invisibly, and entirely in my favor. I exhaled slowly. Not in fear. In preparation. This was no longer about healing. This was reconnaissance. This was chess. Downstairs. I could hear him move from room to room, pretending to clean, pretending to organize, pretending to live a normal morning. But there was an offbeat rhythm to his footsteps, a tension. He knew something was changing. He just didn't know what. Good. I rolled into the hallway, positioning myself where I could observe without being seen. A cold smile touched my lips, not gloating, not excited, simply acknowledging a new reality. He was predictable. I needed predictable enemies. The first test was small, almost laughably simple. I sent myself an email. A decoy. Subject line, doctor follow-up instructions. Body. A fabricated paragraph about needing someone present at all times for safety and a protocol for medical negligence in emergencies. Nothing overt. Nothing dramatic. Just subtle enough to alarm a guilty man. I glided downstairs a few minutes later, placing my phone face up on the kitchen counter, exactly where he couldn't resist looking. Oh, I murmured, as if it were nothing. Let me grab a glass. I left the room. 3 seconds. 4, 5. Footsteps. My pulse didn't quicken, my breath didn't hitch. I merely listened, every tiny movement revealing exactly who he was. He picked up my phone. He read the email. He held his breath. And then, exactly as I predicted, he panicked, quietly, very quietly. I heard the soft tap of his fingers opening a text thread. He was warning someone. The second I returned to the kitchen, he jerked away from my phone like a child caught stealing cookies. My voice was calm. Everything okay? Yeah. Just checking the time. A terrible liar. Predictably terrible. Perfect. I watched him all afternoon. Not obviously. Not dramatically. With the precision of someone who had finally seen the blueprint of a house I lived in for years. He answered calls in another room. He spoke in half sentences. He deleted messages as soon as they came in. He paced the living room, then the kitchen, then the back hallway, circling like something hunted, not something hunting. For the first time, I saw fear living inside him. I let him spin. Let him wonder. Let him feel the pressure of my quiet. I didn't confront, accuse, or question. Silence was my weapon now. And I wielded it beautifully. Late afternoon light drifted through the windows, frosting the floor with a soft glow. He was standing near the entryway when he finally cracked. "You're acting weird, Clara," he said sharply. "No," I replied gently. "I'm acting aware." The words froze him mid-step. He didn't speak for a full 3 seconds. Then, "What does that mean?" I smiled. "Small. Controlled. Terrifying. It means I'm paying attention." He swallowed, throat bobbing. "You trying to accuse me of something?" "I don't need to accuse," I said, turning my wheelchair toward the living room. "People reveal themselves." He opened his mouth again, silenced himself, and walked away instead. I had never seen him retreat from a conversation before. Another shift. Another confirmation. If someone was conspiring with him, I needed to know who. I set a trap. I brought up dinner, casually suggesting they invite his cousin, the only family member he actually listened to, someone he'd always considered a confidant. He froze. Instantly. "No," he said too quickly. "No visitors. You need rest." "I'll feel better around familiar faces," she murmured. "Not today." Ah, there it was. My suspicion felt brutally correct. Whoever was involved wasn't a stranger. They were close. Close enough for him to protect. And now I knew exactly which direction to investigate next. That evening, when he finally showered, I retrieved my hidden flash drive from the dresser and began backing up his emails again, just in case he deleted anything. But this time, something new appeared in the folder. A file I hadn't created. A file I hadn't seen. A file labeled, "For Clara." My breath stilled. I clicked it. A single sentence appeared on the screen. "He wasn't supposed to let you live." The room fell silent around me. Alaska's winter pressed against the window, cold and indifferent. But inside, my heart was no longer frightened. The words on the screen didn't blur. They didn't fade. They didn't soften themselves to lessen the impact. They struck me with the precision of a blade. "He wasn't supposed to let you live." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling not from fear, but from a deep, shattering recognition. Someone out there knew exactly what had happened that night. Someone out there understood the plan better than I did. Someone out there had expected a widow by morning. I closed the laptop slowly, as if any sudden movement might cause the truth to explode. Then I leaned back, heartbeat steady, mind racing. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This wasn't about infidelity or distraction. This wasn't even about cruelty. This was about survival. And I had survived the thing that was meant to end me. Downstairs, I heard the shower stop. Water dripped. The curtain slid. Footsteps stepped out onto the tiles. My breath leveled itself cold, measured, strategic. My world had divided itself into two timelines, before the revelation, after the revelation, and the woman in the after was different. Sharper, colder, clearer. I tucked the flash drive under the lining of my chair cushion, hidden but close enough to defend if needed. As I reached for the door handle of the bedroom, something pulled my attention back. One faint sound. A small, delicate ping. Another notification on the laptop. I froze. Waited. Listened. Then I wheeled back toward the desk and opened the lid. A second message had appeared in the same file. Someone was editing it in real time. My breath hitched. Line by line. It began to change. Clara, if you're reading this, he deleted the earlier evidence. I tried to warn you months ago, but he was monitoring everything. I didn't think he'd actually go through with it. You need to leave. You need. The text abruptly stopped, backspaced itself. Every letter vanished as if someone was trying to erase their own warning before it reached me. Then the screen went blank. Just white. Empty. Breathless. I stared at it, pulse pounding softly in my ears. Someone was trying to speak. Someone was trying to help. Someone was terrified of being caught. Someone on his side. Someone inside their circle. Someone close enough to know the danger I was in. And desperate enough to risk sending me a message. What frightened me wasn't the warning. It was the silence that followed. The bathroom door opened downstairs. I didn't move. Instead, I listened. Footsteps on the hardwood. A drawer pulled open. The faint metallic rattle of keys. He was preparing to leave. And that was unexpected. He had spent the entire morning panicking over my quietness, hovering, watching, checking in. For him to suddenly distance himself meant only one thing. He had received instructions too. When he finally appeared at the top of the stairs, I didn't turn to look at him. I let him speak into the back of my silence. I'm going out, he said flatly. I let the quiet stretch, thin and dangerous. Where? I asked softly. He hesitated. Just errands. Lie. He walked past me, grabbing a coat from the closet. Then unexpectedly he paused directly beside my chair. I'll be back later, he murmured. My tone was neutral. Take your time. He left without looking her in the eye. And as the front door clicked shut, my entire body straightened. Because now I had space. I had time. And I had the one thing I needed most. Access. For years, there had been one room in our home I wasn't allowed into. The gear room, he called it. Hunting equipment. Technical gear. Dangerous tools. But I had always known the truth. It wasn't the contents he was protecting. It was the privacy. Today, for the first time, a tiny sliver of light shone beneath the door. Because he had forgotten something in his rush. He hadn't locked it. I approached slowly, breath steady, heart steady, mind sharp. The door creaked. Inside, the room was dimly lit, cold, filled with the metallic scent of winter gear and oil. But something stood out immediately. Not the rifles. Not the ropes. Not the locked cabinet. A binder, left open on the table. A binder labeled with a single word. Transition. My skin tingled. Inside were printed emails. Financial logs. Instructions. Dates. A timeline of actions. Including my life insurance updates. His communication with someone referred to as partner. The planned transfer of property upon completion. And worst, a page clipped to the front. An outline titled, Post-Incident Plan. I felt my chest tighten, not with panic, but with clarity. The night he refused to call 911 wasn't indecision. It was step 3. I flipped the page. Step 4 was highlighted. Confirm death. I did not cry. I did not shake. I simply breathed. And then very quietly I whispered, You miscalculated. Just as I picked up my phone to document everything, a sound echoed from outside. A crunch. A slow, deliberate pressure into the snow. Not his footsteps. He had driven away. These were lighter, cautious, measured. Someone was approaching the house. I moved silently to the window. My breath caught midair. A figure in a thick winter coat stepped onto the porch. Pausing, listening, checking the windows. I recognized the shape of the walk. The familiar tilt of the shoulders. It was someone closer than I expected. Closer than I feared. Someone who knew. The door handle turned. I backed away from the window, heart quiet but ready. The door opened. And the person who stepped inside was the last person I ever would have imagined. The door closed with a soft click. Too soft, too intentional. I stayed perfectly still, my breath practiced. My heartbeat disciplined. I didn't need to pretend to be fragile anymore, not in this moment, not in front of whoever had just entered. I already knew fragility was my most effective illusion. Footsteps moved across the entryway, brushing snow onto the mat. A voice followed, quiet, hesitant, too familiar. "Clara? Are you home?" My chest tightened, not in fear, but in recognition. The voice belonged to Mara, his sister. The same woman who had insisted I was too dramatic. The same woman who had whispered behind my back at family gatherings. The same woman who had been oddly distant since the night of the incident. The same woman who could very well be the person behind those emails. I did not answer. Not yet. Let Mara reveal why she was here. Let guilt speak before she had to. Mara stepped farther into the house, removing her gloves with slow, stiff fingers. Her eyes darted around, scanning for movement. She wasn't visiting, she was checking. Checking if Clara was alive. Checking if the plan had failed. Checking if she could still fix it. "Mara?" I finally called from the doorway of the gear room. Mara jumped, spinning around. "Oh, Clara. I didn't know if you were awake." I tilted my head slightly. "You came without calling." Mara swallowed, throat bobbing. "I was worried." "About me?" Clara asked softly, gliding forward. "Or about what I might have found?" Mara froze, dead still, her expression drained of color. And that single reaction filled in the blanks more perfectly than any confession. She knew everything. And she was terrified. I finally did too. I rolled closer, the silence between us tense, sharp, almost metallic. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't lash out. I didn't need to. "Mara," I whispered, "what are you doing here?" Mara hesitated. A full 3 seconds. Then, I thought he might have forgotten something important. My eyes narrowed. "Important like the binder?" Mara's breath stuttered. There it was again, confirmation without a word. Cold clarity washed over me as I watched Mara's jaw tense and her eyes flick toward the gear room door. She was looking for the binder. She was confirming whether I had seen it. Perfect. I gently stepped aside so Mara had a full view of the room. Not threatening, inviting. Mara's breath shivered. Her hands trembled. "You weren't supposed to see that," she whispered. The sentence landed like a blade placed delicately on a table. Not swung. Not thrown. But offered. Mai's voice remained steady. "So you admit you were part of it?" Mara looked down at her gloves. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." "That far?" I echoed. "You mean murder?" "No," Mara snapped, too quickly. Then quieter. "At least, not exactly." I leaned forward, my tone icy calm. "Tell me." And Mara broke. Mara pressed her fingers to her forehead as if the truth physically burned to be let out. He told me you were planning to leave him," she whispered. "That you were trying to take the house, the inheritance, everything Dad left us. He said you were manipulating him with the wheelchair, with your illness." My breath grew cold. Weaponized excuses. Weaponized storytelling. He had used my disability as the foundation of his lies. "He said," Mara continued, voice cracking, "he said he needed proof you could take care of yourself. That he needed an incident to happen. Something that would show the courts you weren't stable. He didn't tell me about the heart thing. He just said you'd be scared, maybe shaken up, but fine." I stared at her, astonished not at the confession, but at the stupidity. My husband had planned to stage an incident. But the incident had almost become a death. And Mara had helped. I let the silence stretch just long enough for Mara to feel its weight. "Why send me warnings?" I finally asked. Mara flinched. "I didn't realize he'd actually put you in danger until afterward. By then, I panicked. I tried to warn you without him knowing. I thought maybe if you saw the emails you'd leave him. And all of this would fall apart." My voice lowered. "But you didn't come to protect me." Mara shook her head slowly. "You came to protect yourself." Tears pooled at Mara's eyes, silent and guilty. "I didn't know he'd refuse the 911 call. I didn't know you were actually dying." My tone chilled. Not knowing doesn't absolve you. Mara's lips parted, then closed. She knew it was true. I backed away from the doorway, positioning myself between Mara and the binder. Not fearful. Strategic. Mara, I said quietly, you're going to help me now. Mara's eyes widened. I what? I lifted my phone. Showed Mara the folder of evidence, the screenshots, the messages, the updated insurance paperwork, the timeline. I have everything, I said gently. Enough to ruin both of you. Mara's breath shattered. But, I added, I'm not here for revenge. Not yet. I'm here for survival. What do you want? I leaned in, voice soft as winter snow. I want you scared enough to choose me over him. Mara blinked rapidly. Yes, I continued. You're going to tell me everything. Every detail. Every conversation. Every plan. Every lie. Every step he took while I was dying. Mara's voice shook. And if I don't? I looked at her steadily. No emotion. No tremor. Then you'll be the first name I give to the police. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Inevitable. Finally Mara nodded. Slowly. Brokenly. Terrified. Okay, I whispered. I'll tell you everything. And just as Mara sat down to confess, a car engine roared into the driveway. My husband was back. Hours earlier than expected. Mara's eyes widened in horror. My lips curved. Not in fear. In readiness. The engine outside stopped. Headlights cut across the living room floor. Her husband had returned unexpectedly early. Almost as if fate itself had decided to accelerate the timeline. I didn't flinch. I didn't panic. I rolled to the window, listening, observing. Every step, every sound, every shadow that shifted told me exactly where he was and what he intended. He was home. But he wasn't in control anymore. Not of me. Not of the house. Not of the narrative. Mara sat silently beside me, the binder open, trembling hands holding sheets of evidence like they were fragments of a life she wished she'd never touched. I took a deep breath. Then I spoke softly, in a tone that was calm but lethal. He's here. And you know everything now. Ah yes. Good. Then you're going to help me make sure he never gets a chance to threaten anyone again. Mara nodded slowly, eyes wide. She didn't speak, she only obeyed. Fear had sharpened into clarity. I rolled toward the door of the living room. The hardwood creaked slightly under my weight. I let it be heard. Every movement was deliberate. Every motion a silent warning. He was in the kitchen. He thought he was in command. He thought I was alone. He was about to realize he had miscalculated. The front door opened fully, and the cold Alaskan air rushed in. He stepped through the threshold, coat in hand, eyes scanning for signs of my presence. Clara, he called, voice sharper than normal. A lie. Pretending calm. Pretending control. I rolled into view. Binder in hand. Phone in the other. Evidence ready, silently lethal. Hello, Owen, I said. Soft, precise, almost theatrical. He froze. Recognition flashed across his eyes. Panic, subtle but unmistakable. You. What are you doing? He asked. His voice betrayed him. Not fear. Not guilt. Surprise. Confusion. The first sign of true vulnerability. I didn't answer. I let the silence do the work. Slowly. Mara stood beside me, placing a trembling hand on my arm. This, Mara said softly, voice barely above a whisper, is everything he's been hiding. All the plans. All the lies. All of it. All of it. Owen's face paled. His steps faltered. You're lying, he said, fumbling. This is not. My eyes narrowed. Not lying. Truth. Your truth. Step by step, documented, dated, and ready to be exposed. He looked from me to Mara, then back. He stuttered, trying to reclaim composure. Why are you doing this now? Because I had lived. Because I was no longer afraid. Because the night of my heart attack had shattered illusions, but not my resolve. Because I survived what you planned for me, I said, cold, unwavering. And now I decide what happens next. I rolled slowly, deliberately, around the room, holding the binder up like a torch. Each document a spotlight on every misstep, every lie, every betrayal. His face paled further as he recognized names, dates, transactions. Every reaction, every twitch, Every stammering word was a confirmation the net had been cast and he was caught in it. Do you see now? I whispered, voice soft but dangerous. Mara's nod was slow. Fear painted every line of her body. He couldn't deny. He couldn't escape. My gaze fell on him, unwavering. This is not just about the past, Owen, I said. It's about who survives the truth. And I do. You may not. A long silence filled the room. The kind that drags and lingers, a heavy shadow pressing down on everyone in it. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, a cold chorus to the chaos unfolding inside. Then a phone buzzed, another message from the anonymous sender. They know. Move carefully. I smiled softly. I didn't need to move. Not yet. I had already set the pieces in motion. One wrong step from him, and the betrayals would fall completely. Owen tried to speak again. Clara, wait. I wheeled closer, voice icy calm. Wait? Wait for what? For your lies to protect you? Or for your plans to unravel? He faltered, mouth opening, then closing. I leaned in just slightly, letting my eyes hold his. Time's up. And just like that, the first real crack in his authority appeared. Not in public, not with confrontation, but in the quiet, internal surrender that comes when someone realizes they are completely exposed. And there was no turning back. The house was quiet now, except for the occasional groan of the wooden floor and the low hum of the heater struggling against Alaska's winter chill. I had positioned myself in the center of the living room, binder in hand, phone ready, her presence deliberate, unyielding. Owen stood a few feet away, coat in hand, eyes darting between me and Mara. He had gone from controlling and confident to brittle, fractured, and almost human in his panic. And I could see it all. Every flicker of his face betraying the man he truly was. You think you can just, he began. Voice shaky, trying to reclaim authority. I raised a hand slightly, not threatening, but enough to silence him. I don't think anything, Owen, I said slowly. I know. I know everything. His mouth opened again. That's impossible. You can't. I rolled closer, my eyes locked on his. Calm. Cold. Ruthless. You miscalculated. You underestimated me. You refused to call 911 when I was dying, thinking it would be just another incident. You thought I was weak. You thought I'd break. You were wrong. He stepped back, panic creeping in. Clara. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I interrupted, voice low, sharp. I understand that you've been plotting, manipulating, hiding, and even now, you think you can manipulate me. He faltered. Words failed him. His jaw twitched. The fragile facade of control shattered like ice. Mara watched silently, torn between fear and awe, her body trembling with the knowledge that I now held the power I had been denied for years. Owen tried to speak again, voice rising slightly, desperation creeping in. Clara, please think about what you're doing. We can fix this. I laughed softly, almost mournfully. Fix this? Fix what, Owen? The night you refused to save me? The lies you've spun for years? The plans you hid in plain sight? His face paled. Sweat beaded along his temples. Mara flinched as he turned toward her sister, then back at me. You don't have to do this, he whispered. I can make it right. I leaned closer, the binder open between them. It's already right. The truth is out. And the truth doesn't need fixing. I flipped through the binder slowly, letting him absorb every page, every email, every transaction. Each sheet was a dagger of clarity he could not deny. Look, I said, voice calm, measured. Every lie, every plan, every incident you thought would work, it's all here. And you can't erase it. You can't control it anymore. Not me, not Mara, not your secrets. Owen's shoulders slumped. He sank to the couch, head in hands. The man who had been confident, cruel, and dismissive was gone, replaced by someone exposed, small, and broken. Mara's lips trembled. I never thought he'd actually go that far, she admitted, voice breaking. My eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Then they sharpened again. He did. And now we know. I rolled forward slowly, closing the distance between myself and Owen. My voice was quiet, deadly calm. You need to understand something, Owen, I said. I survived. I survived the heart attack. I survived your betrayal. I survived your plans. And now, I will survive everything else you try to throw at me. But make no mistake, I'm done with you. He looked up at me, tears forming, guilt and fear intertwined. Clara. I cut him off with a single whisper. No. You don't get a word. Not now. Not ever. You have nothing to say that changes the truth. Then I turned to Mara. And you? You can help me. Or you can be next to fall. The choice is yours. Mara nodded immediately, submission and fear guiding her. She knew the only way forward was aligned with me. I glanced back at Owen, voice low, almost cruel in its calm precision. Consider this your first and only warning. The next time you attempt to manipulate, lie, or endanger me, there will be no room for hesitation. And I promise you, the consequences will be silent but permanent. He nodded slowly. Broken, defeated, exposed. And I had guided it myself. As I wheeled back toward the window, Mara quietly picked up the binder and started organizing it. I whispered to myself, eyes on the snow outside, this isn't over. Not yet. But it will be. And it will be on my terms. From the street, a vehicle slowly pulled away. Unknown, silent, watching. The storm of consequences hadn't ended. It had only begun. The snow outside had turned thick and heavy, blanketing the world in white silence. I sat by the window, watching the flakes settle on the roof and the frozen lake beyond. The house felt heavy, charged with the tension of unspoken truths, of lives balanced on razor-thin lines. Owen had retreated to his room, Mara quietly arranging the evidence, and I finally allowed myself a moment to breathe. I should have felt relief. I should have felt triumph. Instead, there was a quiet calculation simmering beneath my calm. I had survived the night, survived the betrayal, survived the threats. But one thing had become undeniably clear. The story didn't end with exposure alone. A knock echoed sharply through the house. I froze. Heart steady, mind alert. I hadn't expected anyone. No one should have had reason to visit tonight. Another knock, louder this time. Purposeful. Deliberate. I wheeled to the door slowly, Mara following silently. I opened it. A man stood in the snow, tall, coat hooded, face obscured, but there was no mistaking him. Clara. His voice was deep, calm, authoritative. I tilted my head, studying him. Who are you? He stepped closer, removing his hood. The dim porch light revealed a familiar face. A man I'd seen only in photos, emails, and cryptic messages. The one who had sent me warnings. The one whose name had never been spoken aloud in my household. I'm here, he said, because what's happening in this house, it's bigger than you know, bigger than him, bigger than me, and it's only just begun. I felt no fear. Only recognition. Explain, I said, voice calm, measured, deadly. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside were photographs, financial statements, and recorded conversations. Evidence of a network. My husband, his sister, partners, contacts, hidden accounts, manipulations stretching far beyond their family. He spoke slowly. Owen isn't acting alone. He's a small part of a much larger game. The incidents, the plans, their tactics. You survived one of many. My jaw tightened. Everything I thought I understood shifted in an instant. My coldly calculated plans now had a broader battlefield. You've already made waves, he continued. But to truly survive, to protect yourself, you have to play the next moves perfectly. One mistake and all this, he gestured at the evidence in my hands, the room, the snow outside, could destroy you. I glanced back at Owen, slumped, defeated, fragile. Mara, anxious, submissive. My lips curved into a faint, cold smile. I've survived the man, the sister, the lies, the betrayal, I whispered. And now, the game is bigger. But so am I. I looked at the snow outside. Each flake drifting silently felt like fate itself, the quiet, unrelenting force that had brought me here. The irony, I had been the intended victim, the weak point. And yet, here I was alive, aware, empowered. The mysterious visitor stepped back, nodding once. Don't trust anyone completely, he warned. Especially him. He's already plotting, even now. My gaze returned to the house, to the binder, to the frozen world outside. I understood. The climax was not a single confrontation. It was the orchestration, the strategy, the silent, inevitable collapse of those who underestimated me. I whispered to myself, let them try. Every move, every lie they'll fall. And I'll rise. Outside, the snowstorm intensified. Inside, my mind sharpened. The final twist was clear. I was no longer a victim. I was the storm. The house was quiet now. The storm outside had softened to a whisper, snow settling in thick, pristine layers across the roof, the yard, the frozen lake beyond. Inside, I moved methodically, every motion deliberate, every step measured. The binder, the emails, the evidence, they were no longer just tools, they were my armor, my leverage. My statement of survival. Mara hovered nearby, still trembling, but no longer resistant. Fear had been replaced with understanding. I had witnessed the collapse of control, the unraveling of lies, and I knew her allegiance now belonged to someone capable, someone unshakable. I allowed myself a long, slow breath. For the first time in months, I felt the faint, warming sensation of control returning, not reactive but proactive. I wheeled through the house, inspecting, cataloging, and mentally mapping the aftermath. Every lie laid bare, every betrayal documented, every threat neutralized or accounted for. Owen remained upstairs, slouched in his room, a man diminished not by confrontation but by revelation. His power, once absolute within these walls, had been stripped layer by layer. I allowed a brief, almost imperceptible smile. It wasn't gloating. It wasn't celebration. It was acknowledgement. I had survived. And I had prevailed. Mara spoke softly from the doorway. What now? She asked, voice quiet, fragile. My eyes, cold and precise, met hers. Now? We rebuild. On our terms. Quietly. Strategically. No one outside this room gets to dictate our story again. I rolled toward the window, looking out at the frozen landscape, the untouched snow reflecting a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I whispered to myself. Silence is power. Observation is power. Timing is everything. My plan for the coming months was simple but meticulous. Protect myself first. Solidify the evidence to prevent any future manipulation. Monitor Owen. Ensure he understood the limits of his influence. Maintain subtle dominance, silent, undeniable, unyielding. I understood something fundamental now. Power didn't always roar. Sometimes, it was the quiet force that reshaped worlds while everyone else slept. Over the following weeks, I transformed the household. Tasks that once depended on Owen or Mara I now managed independently. Each success, each small victory, reinforced the truth. I no longer required anyone's validation. Even my body, still recovering from the physical and emotional trauma, became a testament to my resilience. I pushed myself carefully, intentionally, challenging what I had been told were limits. Testing boundaries, finding strength I hadn't realized existed. Mara helped, cautiously but willingly, learning her own lessons about loyalty, fear, and the cost of complicity. Together, we rebuilt the structure of the house and the unspoken hierarchy within it. One night, as Clara catalogued the last of the evidence, my phone buzzed, another anonymous message. You're doing well. But they are not done. Be ready. I read it, let it sink in, then locked the phone without response. A quiet smirk touched my lips. Good, I whispered. Let them come. I knew the game wasn't over. But the first round was mine. I had survived betrayal, manipulation, and attempted elimination. And I had emerged sharper, colder, more aware. The aftermath wasn't about chaos or vengeance anymore. It was about control, mastery, and the silent rebuilding of power. The storm had passed. Outside, the Alaskan landscape was serene, blanketed in pristine snow that caught the pale morning light. Inside, the house was calm, orderly, almost reverent. I sat by the window, hands folded over my lap, eyes tracing the patterns of frost creeping along the glass. I thought back to the night it all began, the betrayal, the push, the refusal to call for help. The night my life had been threatened, not by accident, but by design. The night I realized how fragile trust could be, and how absolute cruelty could hide behind familiar faces. And yet, I had survived. Not by luck, not by chance, by strategy, by observation, by silence, by patience. I had learned something fundamental about power, about resilience, about life itself. Survival is not about strength alone. It is about clarity, timing, and quiet resolve. Betrayal is not the end. It is the lens through which truth is revealed. Control is earned not by force or intimidation, but by foresight, patience, and unwavering calm. I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. There was no joy in revenge, no thrill in domination, only understanding, only quiet victory, only empowerment born from surviving what others had thought would destroy me. Mara had been transformed by the ordeal too, now aligned with me, aware of the cost of complicity, and determined to act with caution and integrity. Owen remained a hollow figure of his former self, not physically harmed but entirely disempowered. I did not need to strike him further. His fear, his guilt, and the exposure were enough. And me myself? I had rebuilt my life on my own terms. No one would manipulate me. No one would threaten me. No one would underestimate me again. Survival is quiet. Power is quiet. And victory is quietest of all. As I looked out over the frozen lake, the silence wrapping around me like armor, I realized the greatest revenge is not spectacle. The greatest revenge is reclamation of dignity, of life, of agency. And I had reclaimed all of it. The house remained still. The snow continued to settle. And inside, I felt an unshakable calm. The storm had passed, but I was the storm now, unseen, unrelenting, and entirely in control.